This was 7 months ago, but I still haven't gotten any answers from anyone, so I'll share it here and see what others think. So I just got back from my walk. It's about 7 p.m. for me. Sun was setting, it's already overcast, so it's a bit darker than usual. And for a little background, I live in Phoenix, Arizona. One of those houses, kind of away from the main city, out right by a mountain preserve. I guess you could say it's basically connected to it. A very cool area, but very unsettling at night. It's where I go for my walks. About 15 minutes away from my house, right in front of me, I see this strange-looking creature about 10 feet away from me. Seemed to be floating, completely motionless, and hard to make out exactly what it looked like. Glowing red eyes, one snapped horn and another full horn on its head, long black demonic arms with sharp-looking claws, wearing a dark black raggedy cloak. I looked at it for about 2 whole seconds before it vanished, almost like fog. Then it appeared again, further down my walk about 5 or 6 minutes later. Even further than before, almost like it was watching me from a distance. I was listening to my playlist at the time, and suddenly a loud, and I mean loud, horrible high-pitched, blood-curdling scream blasted through my headphones in the middle of the song, and then the creature vanished. It was the loudest scream I've ever heard, but it was probably because it was directly into my ears, but still, it made me drop to my knees. After that, it seemed to vanish. I didn't see it again, but for the rest of the way home, I could feel a presence, as well as a feeling of being watched. I've had lots of encounters with other creatures out here, but this one was probably the most terrifying I've ever had. I've speculated if it was a skinwalker or a banshee, but would definitely like to hear other opinions. Below in the description is the link of the drawing I made of what I saw.
Long post, but please read. I seriously need help, and am terrified out of my mind. So I'll start off by saying I've never believed in anything paranormal. I'm a pretty science-based dude. I always look for a logical explanation, and I still am for this encounter. So if anybody has any ideas, please let me know. I don't have much time for leisure with work recently. I've been having to accept some pretty awful shifts to get by with COVID times. So I've lost my ability to go on my evening walks, which are a method of stress relief for me. It had been a while since I'd gone on one, so about 3 nights ago, I decided just to go for a late night walk. I put on my headband flashlight and decided to take a path I hadn't in ages. There's a small trail near the back of my neighborhood that goes about 4 miles deep into the woods. My plan was to walk about 1.5 miles in and take a parallel path to come back. I made it down to around 1.3 miles, according to my Fitbit, and I start getting a feeling that I'm being watched. I turned off my headlight and sat still to listen. At this point, I'm more concerned that there's a guy following me who is up to no good. I heard clear footsteps in the leaves off the trail, and they've been behind me for nearly 5 minutes. I stopped thinking it was an animal or another walker and became worried. Sitting there for probably 3 to 4 minutes, I hear nothing at all. I turned back on my headlight and decided to start walking quickly back home. About 2 minutes later, I hear the footsteps again. This time it sounds different. It sounds like 4 feet instead of 2 feet walking, and it's walking at the same increased speed that I am. I quickly turned around with my headlight and phone light and pointed behind me. Silence. I get angry and yell out, "Leave me alone! I'm gonna call the cops, and if you come at me, I have a knife." Silence. I yell again to get the fuck out of here, and start walking towards where I heard the walking. About 20 yards out, hard to fully make out because of the flashlight doesn't reach that far, I see what looks like a literal naked man running full speed on all fours into the woods. Normally I'd chalk that up to drugs, but my area does not have a drug problem. and there were some details that led me to believe that it wasn't a person. For one, they were damn near hairless, completely bald, pale white skin, and the way it ran on all fours looked pretty natural. Not like when you try to run on all fours and look stupid. It looked like its bone structure was designed to walk on all fours. There was no hunch to look. Their back was flat, and they were fast. Last thing that happened was straight out of a horror movie. I hadn't heard anything in a while on my way back, but kept turning around to be sure. With about 0.3 miles left to go until I was in the clear, I hear a mad dash through the leaves. I whip around and it stops on a dime. I see the edges of its head behind a tree, and I yell loudly to try and intimidate. What I heard next, I'll never forget in my entire life. It cackled like a monkey. A noise I've literally only heard in nature documentaries. The tone was that of mockery. A predator having fun with me. I didn't stick around. I sprinted as fast as possible back home. I'd love to believe that this was some prank, or some rabid, bald, diseased coyote. But I got a pretty clear look at it. It wasn't. It had human feet, human hands. It had the head of a human, and a human buttocks. But nothing else about it was human. I called the cops after and told them a man was following me. I didn't want to say some creature because they'd probably think I was crazy. They didn't find anything, but they did see quite a bit of activity in the leaves and dirt about 50 feet from where I was on the trail, leading far back into the woods before it got to a large stretch of grass, where no footprints were seen. Please, someone tell me I'm crazy or this was some elaborate prank by a deformed man.
The story continues from the last story you just heard. We went back into the woods, saw it again. So, after some internal debate, I decided I was going to go back because otherwise it would eat me up not knowing what this was. When I first saw it, I had zero idea what it could be. I figured some drugged out or mentally ill man, a prankster, or a sickly deformed animal. After letting it all settle though, there's just no way any of that was the case. I was trying to justify it in my mind because I've always been a heavy skeptic of anything paranormal, still am to be fair, but I'm warming up to the idea that crawlers may actually exist. So I messaged 3 of my buddies, told them everything that happened in detail over text, and asked if they'd come look with me. Them being non-believers like me, and also just loving adventure and spooky stuff, were more than excited to go. 2 of the friends have guns, and so do I, so we all brought them. One friend had a pistol, one had a shotgun, and I had a pistol as well. The other friend was in charge of holding 2 flashlights to give us some light. One being a phone flashlight, so he would be ready to take a picture at a moment's notice. We waited until about 9:30 p.m. when it was completely dark and headed down the same trail I did last time. My heart was pumping out of my chest, but I felt more confident having friends there. They were joking around and thought this was cool, and I tried to joke back a few times, but the reality was I was pretty nervous. We walked the full 1.5 miles I had planned on walking last time and didn't encounter a thing. We had prepped for so long though and didn't want to give up quite yet, so we kept walking. About 5 to 8 minutes later, at close to the 2-mile mark, we started hearing some noises way back in the woods. It wasn't close, but it was loud enough for us to take notice. I told my friend to turn off the flashlight for a second and we listened. Bipedal footsteps made their way closer to us. Still far, but definitely coming our way. Sounded like they were wearing boots or something because the heaviness of the steps was quite loud. That, or there were a lot of leaves, which to be fair is a possibility. It was off the trail, so it's all woods back there. Once the footsteps made it about 20 to 30 yards away, I called out asking if someone was there. The footsteps stopped, but only for a brief second. A second later, the bipedal footsteps turned to what sounded like something sprinting on all fours in our direction. My friend immediately turned on the flashlights, but there was nothing visible through the dense forest. At the beginning of the trail, the forest is pretty clear, but further back it gets a lot more dense, so it was hard to tell. Once he turned on the light, the footsteps stopped as well. None of my friends were talking. Paranormal believer or not, hearing that will scare the shit out of you. My friend unholstered his pistol and kept it by his side. He looked at me, and I could see he wasn't having a good time anymore. My friend holding the camera was visibly shaky and was darting its glance between all of us. The third friend, shortly after, yelled into the woods, "I can see you. Come out. Stop messing with us. We have guns and we'll shoot. I don't want to hurt you over some dumb joke. Come on now." We hear that sound again. I mentioned last time it sounded like a cackle. This time it was more of a yell or a shriek or aggravated noise. I don't even know what to compare it to. I just know it gave me goosebumps. My friend immediately shot his gun into the woods, causing my ears to ring horribly due to me being right next to him. I couldn't hear for shit, but I noticed his gaze went from the spot we heard the footsteps, from over to the right of that spot, about 90 degrees. I followed his gaze and for about a half a second caught a glimpse of, once again, a tall human-like thing running on all fours behind a tree. He started walking towards that direction, but my friend with the flashlight stopped him. He made the point that it was a buckshot. The chances he missed were slim due to the fact that the tree it was next to was covered in evidence that the shot was on target. My friend made a scary point that we hadn't considered. What if it hit it but didn't hurt it? What if he was right? What if it took a shotgun hit and didn't even fall over? My estimate is that it was between 6 foot and 6'4", and maybe 140 to 165 pounds. So if it could still run after that shot, it either didn't get hit, or it's not something we want to mess with. We hear the cackle I heard the first time, that mocking noise. Not so much an aggravated noise this time, more so a noise that gave me the impression it was having fun, or enjoying the fear we blatantly had in our voices. No more footsteps, but my friend shot in its general direction again. Ears ringing once more, I couldn't hear anything, but I did see a small glimpse again of it running off deeper into the woods. Could only see its rear for a second or two before it was too far to be seen by the light. This meant it had to be running pretty fast. I don't want to give a number, but if I had to guess, it was easily around 20 miles per hour or so. Nothing a human could do on all fours, that's for damn sure. We turned around and jogged back home. Upon getting home, we talked about what we saw. Nobody was disputing my story now. We had all seen it. We talked all night. I showed them some of the comments on my last post where they suggested a crawler. We read a lot of posts here, and some of them matched our experience. Some didn't. But we did all agree that if it was paranormal, that a crawler was the best guess we had. Now we're all on the same page. We still don't know if we buy into all paranormal claims, but this one is starting to convince us. We realized at the end we hadn't even looked for pictures. We asked my friend with the phone, and he shyly admitted he hadn't even thought to take a single picture. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I was so terrified I didn't even open the camera app a single time. I was just trying to make sure it wasn't behind us or charging us. I'm sorry. We told him not to worry. None of us would have been any better about being calm enough to set up a picture. I never saw its face still, but the friend who took the shot swears it didn't have one, or at least had no eyes. He couldn't see if it had a mouth, but it was about a third out from behind the tree, and from his angle he saw it was blank from the nose area up. Or if it did have eyes, it was too black to be noticeable in the dark. We did all decide though we're going to go back. We'll be more prepared next time. We'll do our research. We'll have a camera strapped to us or always recording. We know what to expect, so we'll be more calm. Any other tips or advice, please let me know. We'd really like to capture some full-on evidence of this thing.
I'm Rick Martinez, truck driver, coming back from Utah going into Nevada. I pulled over to update my logs, got up on top of a hill to a rest area. Nothing but desert all around me. No cars, nothing. As I was writing into my logbook, I felt someone was staring at me. So I looked up, and I saw this old man standing there all raggedy, with a long beard just staring at me. So I rolled down my window and I asked him if he was okay, but he wouldn't answer. So I repeated, "Are you alright? Do you need help? Do you want some water?" He still would not answer me, so I opened the door and stood on my step and said, "I'm not coming down there. You need to come over here." He still would not answer. So I told him, "Alright, old man, last chance. If you need help, you better tell me now." So I got back in my truck, closed the door, put my truck into gear, and started to roll off. He started to walk alongside the truck. I'm thinking I'm going to end up running this guy over. So I just said, "Let me get out of here." As I pick up speed, he starts running alongside the truck. And I'm thinking, "Fucking crazy old man." I'm starting to pick up more speed, getting ready to get back on the highway. And I turn to look to make sure that I'm not going to run this guy over. And he's not there. What I see instead is a coyote running next to me, and that coyote kept up with the truck for at least a couple of blocks, until I finally started pulling away from him. I didn't want to look in the rearview mirror anymore. I just wanted to get away.
This happened a few years ago when some friends and I went to Red Rock Park in New Mexico to camp. An absolutely beautiful area with some great places to hike and camp. 3 of my friends and I got there early in the day and set up our gear, then planned to hike for the rest of the day. Headed out on the trails and made good time. Of course, with it being a state park, there were lots of people, so my friends and I decided to head off trail, even though technically we shouldn't have. This was stupid for 2 reasons. Off the trail, it would be easier to be bitten by a snake we wouldn't see. And the second reason is what happened next. We got down into a gully and followed it for a while until it hit a small canyon that we went down into. It was a small climb down, but that was part of the adventure. Once at the bottom, we began to see bones littered all over the place. Some of them were coyote bones, with a few cows, a couple of horses, and even some dead birds littered the area. It was really creepy, so we decided to get the hell out of there and back on the trails. Once back out of the canyon and in the gully, we noticed a crow following us. It would fly ahead of us and land, then watch as we passed by and repeated the process, almost like it was making sure we were leaving. This walk had taken some time, and with having set up our tents earlier in the day, it was starting to get late. The sun was just starting to set, and we were about out of the gully. The crow landed one more time, then hopped behind a large shrub. Each one of us were watching the crow, and we all confirmed we saw it go behind that shrub. It was so weird that it followed us like that. We passed by the brush without thinking about the crow, but once past, we heard a low growl. Each one of my friends and I looked back and saw a rather large coyote come slinking out of the bush and bare its teeth before it turned and ran back down the gully towards the canyon. As it ran from us, we ran from it and got back on the trail and down to our tents as fast as we could. Once back at the tent and surrounded by people again, we began to talk about what had happened. One of the guys with us is really into spooky stuff and cryptids and whatnot. He's the one that suggested it was a skinwalker, and we must have trespassed somewhere we shouldn't have. Whether it was a skinwalker or not, the whole thing was bizarre. I've never seen a bird act like that, and how or why would it go into a bush with a coyote in it? So much doesn't make sense. I own a cattle ranch out in central Montana, and lately there have been some strange things going on. Losing a cow or two to wolves or other predators isn't unusual, rare, but not unusual. When and if you find the cow again, there are clear signs of a wolf attack. Lately, I've been losing more than should ever be expected, about 12 so far this year, and when they're found, they're completely mangled. If I wasn't a rancher, I'd be hard-pressed to identify what it was. That's the least of my worries at the moment, though. When I'm out on my property lately, I've been feeling like I'm being watched. On some occasions, I've heard whistling coming down from hills I'm near. I know it's not the wind. It sounds like someone is whistling to get my attention. A few times I've wanted to follow it, but so far I haven't. I had a buddy come with me out on the range and help repair a fence about a week ago. Now when I'm out checking the property or watching the herd, I sometimes hear him call my name. I know it can't be him because he lives about 40 miles away. But here's the strangest thing that happened, and what really gets my skin crawling. 2 nights ago, I took the dog out to do his business before bed and to have a smoke. The dog wanders out past where I can see him. Then I hear something that I can best describe as teeth chattering. My dog begins to bark his head off, and this chattering gets louder. Not sure of what he's found, I call him back to me. He gets back, and I can hear something walking our way. I flip on the back porch light and about shit myself when a stark white creature bolts from the light almost faster than I can see. It was on all fours and its skin looked to be drooping from it. There was no fur from what I could tell. It was the oddest thing I'd ever seen, and big too. Well, I looked up what it could be, but couldn't find any animal that fit what I saw. So I began to look up unidentified creatures, which led me to cryptozoology. It was interesting, but I began to think I was being foolish looking up these imaginary made-up critters, until I saw a Fleshgait. Immediately I said, "That's it! That's what I saw!" When I read up on what it does, it fit everything that had been happening. Now I'm scared. I think it might be hunting me, and I don't know what I'm gonna do except for try and blast it if it gets too close. I live in a pretty decent-sized town in Iowa. There's a forest by a park about 15 minutes from my house, and I go there every Sunday to walk and lose myself in thought. Went there 2 weeks ago to do my usual thing. Nothing was off or anything like that. It was just a normal time out there for me. Must have not been paying attention to where I was going, because I ended up in a part of the forest I don't remember ever being in before. Nothing looked familiar. In fact, the only thing that brought my attention back to look around was that I smelled something off. It smelled like, well, for lack of a better term, ass. It stunk like straight up booty. I looked around to find where the smell was coming from because it was so strong, and then I noticed some rotting animal corpses behind some dead wood. Next, I heard a small voice calling for help. It came from deeper in the woods, and I began to follow it, thinking it was a young girl or something lost back there. I went looking for a good minute, but the further I walked, the further away the voice sounded. For some reason, it struck me that I was being lured back further into the woods. Nothing about what was happening felt right. Why would a little girl be back there and getting further away? I called out just in case something really was happening, but all I got back was the same help. No change in pitch or tone. It was like someone had a message on repeat. I stopped and turned to go back because I was worried someone was trying to get me back there to jump me. That's when I heard something move behind me. When I looked back, I saw a white blur go between the trees. It was tall is all I could make out, probably 7 or 8 feet tall and fast. That's all it took for me to start sprinting out of there. I didn't even look back to see if it was following me. If it caught me, but I was gone. Got to my car and took off. I haven't gone back to those woods since. I'll find a new place to walk to clear my head. I know that Skinwalkers are in Utah. I've seen the Skinwatcher Ranch TV show that's set further up north. But would they come down this far? I ask this because something happened that I can't explain. I live in Ephraim, a very small town near the middle of Utah, and not far from the Manti-La Sal National Forest. There are stories from that national forest that I've heard that would make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. A few days ago, I was walking home at night from my friend's house, and I usually cut through Pioneer Park. Not because it's faster, I just like walking through the park. Anyways, I was walking through when I saw someone off in the shadows a ways away. Didn't really alarm me. It's a small town and not much happens here. The only thing odd about it was that the person looked to have a jacket on. It's the middle of summer, and while nights sometimes do get a bit chilly, it looked like a fur coat they were wearing. I don't think they saw me though, so I kept a sideways glance on them just in case, but continued walking, minding my own business. This is where things get weird. I swear they hunched down on all four, and even though they were in the dark, they kinda changed. Right in front of my eyes, the person who was just there changed into a coyote or something. I didn't stick around long to find out what had happened. I ran out of there, but while I was running, I heard the most god-awful high-pitched howl I've ever heard. I know it really happened because all the dogs in the area went ballistic. By the time I made it home, which wasn't much further, I thought I was going to pass out. I shook for about 15 minutes after I finally regained my breath. I really don't know much about Skinwalkers, I'll be honest. Just little bits I've heard here and there, so if I'm wrong about what I saw, let me know.